Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the Fisherman's Favorite Podcast. We got the Walleye Opener special coming at you today. We're going to talk all things opener. We got Sam Larson down here, Charlie Peterson in the middle, myself, Joe Oman, and then Jace Peterson down on the end. We got some good tips for you. Maybe it'll help you put a few more walleyes in the boat on opener.
There's deer in the meadow, frogs in the pond, a place up the river where the fish are getting long. Bass in the lilies, crappie in the reeds, walleye on the rocks and pike in the weeds. There's a fella down the road who's a real fishing man, give you a stringer for the frying pan. Northland, fish and tackle, fisherman's favorite, it's a fisherman's favorite.
All right, Joey, are you ready? Are you ready for the opener?
I'm not ready for the opener. I started cleaning my boat out a few weeks ago. I got about a quarter of the way through it, and it's still a disaster.
I'm sure there's quite a few people in the same boat, Joe.
So if we're going to pop the cap off this whole thing right now, most important piece, in the fall when you put your boat away, spend a little extra time, clean it up, get it ready to roll. You'll thank yourself in the spring.
You know, spring seems like a season where, like, you know, walleye's not open. You have all this time to get ready. You know, I'm going to make it up to the Rainy River a bunch. But it just gets packed in. It's like too short of a season in between getting the boat ready, other springtime activities, you know, hitting the rivers, doing all that.
Especially this year.
It goes by really quickly, I've learned. I've always think I have a ton of time to get ready, but you know, at Northland, we're lucky enough that they give us the Friday off before opener, and the last few years I've been literally getting the boat in shape to be able to fish on Saturday morning on that day. So I'm hoping not to have that this year, but spring just gets jammed in.
That's some picture-perfect procrastination right there.
I know.
But life gets in the way. There's other things to be done. You got to get the garden rolling, the grass ready, you know, get the table and the chairs out on the deck.
Turkey hunting.
Turkey hunting.
Turkey hunting.
There's an endless list of things to do once it starts warming up, and for some reason, you forget that your boat's full of old plastics and cut-off line and just junk from the fall. But we're here to tell you a week early, 2 weeks early, do it now, not the Friday before.
Yeah.
You'll thank us.
Invest in a shop vac.
Ooh, there you go. A little wet dry vac.
I think too, I know, like I talked about this on our early ice episode, but using the KISS method, keep it stupid simple, is really important. And I always make sure I have the necessities, the things that I need on the water, plug, life jackets, fire extinguisher, all that stuff, and then keep the tackle pretty simple, because usually in the Minnesota Opener, it's always going to be a similar thing. But I think if you get too cute with getting all your tackle ready, that's when you really miss some necessities, and all of a sudden you have a dead battery or something stupid because you were fiddling with all these little things trying to get ready for the whole season, not just the weekend upon us. So
batteries is another important one. But if any of you remember back to the first ice show that we did, talking about getting ready for first ice, there was one thing in particular that we talked about a little bit that was probably stupid, or sounded stupid, but very important, and Charlie knows all about that. You got to keep what? Make sure you have what right away.
You got to have your tools like pliers, clippers. What else?
A hook cutter's always needed.
A pair of side cutters to cut a hook if you need to.
Yep.
And that's kind of a keep it stupid.
Those are the ones you
deal.
forget about.
Yeah, that's the stuff that you forget about and you end up needing. If you don't take care of your batteries, you're not even going to make it on the lake, buddy. But if you get out there and start catching fish and, well, you catch a little pike and it swallows it, you don't have a pair of pliers, it's not going to be a fun time.
no, I've used many random objects to try to push the hooks out backwards out of a pike's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't hurt to bring the boat to the ramp before opening morning and make sure it fires up, because everyone is antsy to get out fishing. So a little work ahead of time.
So maybe we went a couple steps too far already. Back up to the start, Sam. Go down on like what the last thing you want to do is show up to the boat ramp opening morning. Your motor won't start. There's a line out the parking lot to the road. Everybody's waiting on you, and you can't get your rig started. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, if you didn't do your proper winterization, that's could potentially be a problem for you. But you start rolling the boat out in the spring, a month before opener, 2 weeks before opener. Check your batteries, make sure they still got power. And then, if possible, roll down to a boat ramp, dump it in, make sure she's going to fire up. If you can fire it up on muffs, that works too.
But fire it up.
Yeah. Fire it up, make sure it'll fire up. So the last thing you want to do is be that guy at the boat ramp.
But if that guy is at your boat ramp, be courteous and try to help him out. I know everyone's in a rush, but that guy never feels good, and it really could happen to any one of us. At one point, be helpful. I know a few years ago, a guy dumped his boat on the ramp at opener, forgot to hook it up, like brand new boat for him. He had it on a roller trailer, dumped it on the ramp, but just got a few guys behind it and pushed it back on, and he was good to go. So just be helpful. Don't be the gawker and the laugher, because it can happen to anyone.
They're just gonna start moving too fast, and something else is gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
But like you said,
that's another thing.
Fire up beforehand, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna fire up the next time. Like a lot of cases, I just tested it out the other day and it was working just fine.
Be prepared so you don't have to rush, because when you rush, that's when mistakes happen and you end up causing more issues. So just kind of run through everything so you're ready to go. But when you do go, take your time and just do it right instead of having something happen and causing more of an issue.
I think another good tip is a lot of people want to get out at midnight or right away in the morning, and that's not always necessary. You can show up at the boat ramp at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, and you're going to be in between shifts of boats coming in and out, and then you can not be in a rush, and then find a spot to start catching fish.
So this time of year, it's usually good all day long, unless you get flat calm, high sun or whatnot. A lot of times the bite will increase a little bit around that 9, 10 o'clock when the water temps start to warm up a bit. So
It's also a lot warmer at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Middle of May.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully we have a good weather opener up north like this. It's been snowing more than a handful of times in the past few years, but it looks, knock on wood, like we'll have a good weather, or at least tolerable weather.
It should at least look closer to summer than winter, ideally.
Sam, you touched on, bring the necessities for tackle. What are your guys' go-tos for fishing opener?
Yeah, let's dig into the fun stuff. Like, everyone's kind of on different stages, and whether their boat's ready or
Whether you've been
not
fishing
ready,
for a couple months.
But let's just imagine everyone has all that stuff ready, and let's dig into what tackle that you're going to have ready to go this opener.
Start it off, Sam.
I keep it, again, super simple, and it is pretty impossible to beat a tungsten short shank jig and a shiner, and I will probably have some tungsten jigs and eye candy paddle shads rigged up too. But it seems like the shiner minnow is just the spot tail shiner up here is like a rite of passage for opener. It feels good to go to the bait store and spend a good chunk of change.
It's like tradition
on some bait, but it feels good to cast a shiner. And once I got some fish, usually I try to switch out to plastics and see if they're going on plastics. But live bait fishing for walleyes can be fun, so usually a jig and a shiner for me. And then I also make sure to have some stinger hooks with you, because it seems like a lot of times, if you get into some small males or whatnot and they're just mouthing it, having a stinger hook attached can literally double the amount of fish
For
you
sure.
catch. So I always make sure to have my stinger hooks with too. Charlie?
Yeah, I'm real similar with. I'm gonna have tungsten short shank jig, probably 1/8 and 16th ounce, and I'm gonna run a spot tail shiner, and then I'll have another setup with some eye candy, either a grub or a paddle shad. If I'm going out, at midnight, I've had some success pulling rumble shads up shallow. Rumble shiners, actually.
Yep.
Rumble shiners. So pulling crankbaits can be effective too. What about you, Joe?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know how much variety we're going to get here. I am going to be ready to roll with a tungsten short shank as well. You got the tungsten short shank for any of your live bait applications. So spot tail shiners on a tungsten short shank is pretty tough to beat. It's almost always going to work for the first 3 to 5 weeks of the season. So you got to have that. And then I would also run a regular tungsten jig with a regular shank with an eye candy paddle shad. But then I'm also going to have a rumble shiner or some sort of jerk bait tied up. If you can get them to go on plastics or some sort of a crankbait, hard bait, to me, that's probably the funnest way to do it, because when they're doing it, they are smashing it. Sometimes on opener, it seems like they don't want to hit a reaction bait like that. And then obviously they're going to be eating the spot tail. But that's kind of like your 1-2 punch. If you can't get them to go on a reaction bait, I'm going to drag a shiner around. Just because they're pretty much always going to eat that.
What the best option is you run out of bait, and then you force yourself to go to plastics, and you find out they're biting just as good as plastics,
That's right.
but you still burnt out through all the $50 in spot tails you spent.
Which is good.
Yeah.
One other sleeper pick, the 4th rod, is a little slip bobber.
Oh yeah, I forgot you pull that out.
If I get in a lull and I'm having a hard time, and opening weekend, you're always going to see other people out there. If other people are catching fish and you're not, that's one thing. If you look around you, nobody's catching fish anymore. It will occasionally pay off to just let a slip bobber soak out there. For whatever reason, maybe the mood changed, a feeding window closed, could be a million different things. If you have a little slip bobber with a 16th ounce jig and a leech or your spot tail shiner, plop it out, let it soak, relax for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe eat a sandwich. You never know. It might just go down. And then maybe you found yourself another bite while everyone else around you is struggling. It's a nice little wild card to have in the boat.
Yeah, I think the slip bobber is something that's going to be effective any time of the year. I kind of leave it out of my lineup just because you kind of do a lot of it later in the summer. And I just want to, catch him on a jig. But I just wanted to make one quick change to my lineup. I'm going to have...
Oh, we can make changes now?
16th ounce tungsten short shank jig. My other rod's going to be an 1/8 ounce stand-up fireball jig.
Okay.
And then my third rod's going to be a rumble shiner.
Classic stand-up. So you want a slightly different presentation.
Yeah.
Just change it up a little bit in case something's not firing.
Correct.
Jace?
You guys are kind of going finesse-y. Joey threw in a crankbait. I guess Charlie did too, but I think Charlie means more after dark. I'll probably be in the boat with Charlie on opener. So he's going to be fiddling around with a shiner and a tungsten short shank. I think I might go deep V bucktail.
Mm.
Rock like a quarter or an 1/8 ounce and fish a little more aggressive. And I mean, Charlie and I like to fish that way all the time just because he'll either catch them, I'll either catch them. We'll both catch them sometimes, but we'll figure out a bite faster.
It's like fishing against a 4-armed man.
Right. Last year we had the Sunday of the Minnesota Fishing Opener. We had a really good day on DV bucktails. And we first started tipping them with minnows, and by the end of the day it I don't think it mattered if you did or not, but I kind of grew into that bite, and it's a fun bite. Throw it out there into a pot of fish, short rips depending on how cold the water temp is or whatever, and they would just crack it.
Tipped with a minnow or plain?
We started tipping them, and then I think we actually ran out of bait, or the minnows got too small in the bottom of the bucket where I don't think it mattered. Charlie actually, he's got one in his office right now that's got a 3-inch eye candy minnow on the back of it. That looks really good because that's going to just stand straight up on the bottom and slow it down a little bit too.
So there's one that I didn't think of. It doesn't necessarily have to be a plastic or a crankbait. Bucktail works too.
Hair in the spring is
right.
Yeah.
For little rip jigging action.
That's right. Yeah. I had to switch it up too.
I like that.
The one thing with talking about bait too a little bit. So we all, we're in northern Minnesota. The spot tail shiner is like the deal on big systems up here. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't apply to everywhere. And sometimes it can be a fathead bite on those bigger systems, depending on what the spot tails are doing for the spawn. But I think on some of those bucktails, I don't really like. Do you ever put a big shiner on
I'll usually stick to
like a little
fathead or rainbow minnows. That's like my favorite if I can get them.
Like I feel like the spot tail, everyone's like, oh, it's what they taste or whatnot. I feel like the spot tail is a visual bite.
It's the profile.
It's the profile. It's the shine. It's almost like throwing a plastic. Mm-hmm. And when you have something that has that profile, like the deep V bucktail, you just need a little bit of that taste, and the fathead does the trick for that. So having some fatheads is important too. And again, hopefully you're on such a good bite, you run out of spot tails and you run out of fatheads, and then you go to plastics and it's working just as good.
That's right.
It's everyone's dream on opener, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the tungsten jig, because I know we get questions a lot. Like people they balk at the price, but all of us went down the line and said we'd use a tungsten jig pretty much. Jace, you didn't mention it, but
it's going to be on my second rod.
You're going to have one, right? And if I didn't work at Northland, I would pay full price every day of the week, all day, to fish with a tungsten jig. Just because I think it's that much more of an enjoyable fishing experience. It's the same as fishing out of a little nicer boat with a little nicer rod.
Yep.
It's just that added benefits of the small profile tungsten has. Our tungsten has really good hooks in them. It's hard, so you feel bottom. I don't know. We make a lot of really, really nice lead jigs between the Deep V and the MVP. And it really takes a lot for me to move away from that tungsten now. Really kind of the only time I'm doing it is going to that MVP with that little bigger gapped hook.
Yep.
Again, kind of reflects on what I talked about, stinger hooks. Sometimes if they're short biting it, that little longer shank, big stout hook, I like to stick them with the MVP. But why do you guys like fishing tungsten?
It's really hard to explain. Like, you have to just try it.
It's like a feel thing, right? Yeah, it just feels different.
It's really hard to explain, but if you go from one to the other, like, you can just tell that you're more connected, like, with you and your jig. Like,
I think it's like fishing with a $50 combo versus a $250 combo.
Yeah.
And I think you can make your $50 combo feel more like a $200 combo when using the tungsten.
I would think it's almost like it'd be like fishing with a mono compared to a braid.
Yeah.
You're just more connected. You know what's going on. The one thing I was going to say with tungsten is we found that, like if you're usually using a 1/4 ounce jig, you can almost get away with an 1/8 with the tungsten. Falls a little faster. Your sensitivity is there. Last year, Charlie and I, opening weekend, caught some on the 16th ounce tungsten. That was when it first came out. And, we had eighth ounce tungstens on, and we just felt like we were too close to the bottom. And usually in the past, 1/8 ounce lead fireball jig would be, the perfect jig for that. Switch over to the 16th ounce, let it float just a little bit more. And, that was one of our best bites this spring.
I think a big thing about that, and Tom Wynn's been talking about it a lot recently, is a lot of people want to have their line, coming directly out of their rod, and sometimes you're going to get more bites with a bow in your line because your presentation is going to be able to act more naturally. And with the tungsten, you can still feel just as good with a bow in your line compared to lead.
Yeah. So Charlie, you like a bow in your line?
Yeah, like I can't wait to put a bow in my line on opener.
Interesting. And cool. Is it just the added action, light jigs, or?
It's just giving a natural presentation. So a lot of times, say you're spot locked into the wind, you just kind of cast perpendicular and hold your rod tip up, and the wind's going to drag that light jig right where it needs to be. You're not putting any, action with your rod on it. It's just going with the wind. And
I think a big part of that is the light jig.
Yeah, it's the light jig.
Which, so you guys did that with that 16th last year. See, I'm kind of the opposite of, if it's windy out, I like fishing in 8th, even in shallow water. I like fishing in 8th just because I like knowing where my jig is. And if it's windy, I'm always fishing straight upwind, or most of the time straight downwind. Because I feel like I'm a little rusty, right? We've just been ice fishing all winter. I'm not feeling bites as well. My boat control might not be right back there yet. I want to just make every advantage in my favor on the opener. So I like fishing directly downwind. I know one year it was just howling, and I just spot locked and went to the back of my boat and just cast it out right on this break line, and I was like the only one catching fish because it was gnarly out. So I don't know. I like feeling everything on opener, knocking the rust off and feeling everything. So that's interesting. How about line? What are you guys going to run for line on your jig setups?
I'm going to run a 10-pound braid to 6 or 8 pound fluoro leader, probably like 6 foot leader.
That's where I'm at too. I'll switch the length of leader depending on where we're at. If we go to Cass Lake, it might be a 12-foot leader, because the water clarity is. It might even be more than that because you can see so clear in that lake. But if we go to Red Lake, I don't think it matters. It's probably okay to get away with a 3-foot leader.
Yeah, right. I've always been braided leader too, but I want to mess around a little bit more with mono this year. Yeah, just because I have so many of these local hammers. I always say, you catch way more fish on mono. Guides that say, I use mono and give my clients braid and I catch way more fish on mono. Yeah. So I'm going to play with it and see what that's all about. But, that might have something to do with the bow in the line and the natural action, because it's going to give some lift to the jig. It's going to give some shock to the jig. So
the one thing I think a reason why mono does work well, especially in the spring, is you don't feel them grab onto it as well. Yeah. And you're giving them just that added second to, take that extra crunch, and then you're giving them the beans. With braid and a tungsten jig, you're almost so sensitive that, you feel that little tiny tick, and it's just the minnow or the walleye just bumping it or just grabbing the tail end, and you rip it out of its mouth or something.
Yeah. Last year on red, right around then, you could literally, like, the way they're eating it, you could feel that the hook was in the fish. And I checked the hook. It was sharp or whatnot, but you could feel it just get ripped out of their mouth, just because I think they're just kind of lethargically grabbing it. It's not like a chomp like midsummer. And I wondered if we would have had mono, if we would have been able to put a few more hooks in some of those fish. We still caught them, but it was weird. Yeah. It was like frustrating not being able to hook all these bites we were getting.
I mean, when you say that makes 100% sense, but I'm going to tell you, you're crazy. I mean, braid was created for a reason, and it's popular for a reason. You can't lose sensitivity like that and make it up anyway. Back in the day when you had nothing but mono to fish with, you're just dragging a spongy noodle around. Okay, you can't feel much. You got a lot of stretch in that line. To me, you're gonna lose penetration with mono. Obviously, there's so much stretch in it. It doesn't feel great setting the hook on a fish with monofilament unless you're real close to them. When you get out there, start making some halfway decent long casts with braid and a leader. We're not talking straight braid, but a leader. It's monofilament, fluorocarbon, doesn't matter. You get some of that feel back, but then you also get a little bit of stretch.
Yeah.
But then you also get rock solid hook sets. To me, braid to a leader, it's a perfect combination. Whether it's 10 pound leader, 8 pound, 6 pound leader. I mean, personal preference is going to go a long ways, but to get a good solid hook set on these things, to me, I'm going to take that every day over natural floating action. There could be something to say with that, but if you want that, tie on a longer monofilament leader and let it float a little.
I feel like
I got a hot take that I think it's just going to work better for Sam because he's fishing with a, taut line. So you put the mono in there.
yeah.
With taut line, it's going to catch more fish. Plus, Sam likes to do a lot of bass fishing, so he's going to
Jacking them.
be setting the hook.
Are you setting the hook too hard?
I don't know. I don't think I'm
Sam's too anxious.
I'm usually
he feels that.
Anxious. Maybe I might set the hook too fast. I don't think I set it too hard for
It's the
walleyes.
first 2 hours of walleye season, and as soon as Sam feels anything,
I'm just
swinging
boom.
for the fence.
jacking on it. Yeah.
I may set it too fast. I don't know about too hard. Another thing, talking about stretches, I feel like rod technology has changed what line needs to do. Because I noticed that when we started throwing a lot of cranks, after we bought Bagley and whatnot, that you can. So everyone says, you want a glass blink or a blended glass blink throwing cranks on straight fluorocarbon. You can get the same effect throwing a heavy moderate action graphite rod with straight mono.
Yep.
It feels exactly the same. It's all about how the rods absorb. So I think kind of the tips they put on rods nowadays and the technology, you can all even it out.
And that's the same way with spinning with, most guys use a medium light action, with braid. Sam could go to a medium and use mono, and he'd have the same, same hook setting power anyways.
Exactly.
Maybe.
But if I take
Those are some hot takes right there.
my little medium 6'6" dock slayer rod that you used at Mille Lacs last year.
You take a little
stout
pool cue out
Put
there.
a little mono on that. Could be juice.
I mean, you're going to get some of your hook setting power back, but you're never going to be able to get the same feel. Your feel will be better with a newer, nicer rod.
That is true.
Yep.
But
Because like I said on my earlier example of
and tungsten too.
a glass rod with fluorocarbon versus a mono rod with graphite, you're going to feel more on the fluorocarbon. With a less sensitive rod.
Graphite rod with mono.
Yeah. Graphite rod with mono. You're going to feel less just because that mono is that absorbent. I wonder what the stretch rate on mono is. Do you guys know what the stretch rate is?
I'm not 100% sure.
There's got to be like a percentage.
I think it depends on the brand, probably a little bit. But
Are you guys high vis braid guys, or don't you care?
I'm a high vis braid.
I guess, are you a line watcher?
Or I'm a line watcher. High vis braid or white. I've been throwing a lot because some of the brands I use, I find that the high vis just washes out of it anyways. Mm-hmm. So then you just buy the white and you can still see the white really well.
Yep.
But definitely a line watcher.
Yep.
I have, both colors of braids, and I don't think I really ever really watch the line much.
I don't watch the line for some reason.
I might, but thinking about it, I can't really say.
to me, I do use high vis, but not necessarily for bite detection per se. It's more like when you pitch your jig out there, you're watching your slack line to see when it's hit the bottom.
Yeah.
So you got line leg on the surface,
Yep.
and you can see it going down, 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 and then it stops. You're there. It's not that big of a deal when we're talking, we're probably talking 12 feet or less. So
on our lakes in the spring, yeah.
Right.
But I think for the new angle, like that's a really good point, Joe.
True.
For the guy that maybe only goes fishing a handful of times with his buddy in the year, that is a really key thing to know you're on the bottom.
Being able to see your line, go slack, just like ice fishing.
Yeah.
I think high vis braid really has a place if you are a slackline guy too. If you want to let your jig go out there and kind of float and naturally get pushed around a little bit, not necessarily be way up or anything, but if you're gonna let it kind of blow with the wind current or whatever's happening, when you have all that bow in your line, watching that high vis is probably the best way that you can tell if you have a bite. If you do that, then all of a sudden you're going to see your line start moving the other way, move against the current or whatever it's going to do. And that's how a lot of people like pitch high vis braid. But to me, I don't slack line a lot. So pitch it out there, watch it go, 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 stop. All right, now we're fishing, we're dragging.
Yeah.
I feel like it can't hurt. I mean, as long as you're, leader, depending on where you are, high vis braided line is probably going to benefit more than hurt.
Yeah, and that's one of the key things with high vis. And anybody that may not have a lot of experience fishing braid, you should be tying a monofilament or fluorocarbon leader to that. You can fish braid straight, but it's almost it's got zero stretch. So all you're going to end up doing is bending hooks, breaking hooks. If you get snagged in something bad enough, potentially breaking a rod if your drag's not set right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. I wouldn't really recommend it.
That leader,
some sort of a leader.
Yeah, the leader's nice for, making your line invisible to the fish, but then also having just a little bit of sponge to.
Yeah, you need a little bit of a shock absorber.
Yep.
Fish landing power. Yeah. So, and I think the easiest knot is double uni. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. Is that what you guys do too?
I play with a couple different ones, but it changes.
FG.
No,
I still got. I can't tie an FG consistently.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just have them unravel. That's my goal for this summer is to learn how to tie them actually in the boat and not at my house watching a video, testing, pulling.
I had someone tell me the best knot you can tie is the one you can tie the best.
Yeah, quickest. That's to say, sometimes like I'll get ready for the day and tie FGs and test them all, but then you end up breaking off and tying on a new leader, and I just tie a double uni in the boat because it's quick and easy to do.
That's another
and
good
it works
tip.
Just fine.
That's another good tip for preparing yourself for walleye opener.
That should be the opening line of this podcast.
If you don't remember how to tie your leader knot or even your knot to your jig, the easiest place to go would be I go on YouTube, look it up, best fishing knot for this, best leader to leader knot, or line to line knot. Because opening day, 30 minutes in, you don't want to be screwing in the bottom of the boat with trying to connect line to line.
First bite you get and your knot comes apart.
Exactly.
I think, don't people say that the best leader to leader knot that you can possibly tie is the one that you're the quickest at and the most proficient at?
That's right.
You don't have to go tie an Alberto or a San Diego Jam or an FG or something that you can't even pronounce. It's the one that you can tie consistently that will hold.
You ever tried the queso burrito knot?
Sounds good. No.
All right, going forward, you guys want to touch on lakes? I mean, I think we're in the Bemidji area. We have more than a handful of great lakes within 2 hours of us. I pretty much stick to 1 or 2 lakes every year. I like to open up either on the Cass Lake chain or Red Lake. Lots of fish. There's people, but the nice thing about opener is everyone's excited. Usually everyone's in a good mood. The fishing's good, so it's not that big a deal to join the crowd and hoot and holler with each other. That's usually where I'll be anyways.
I think as far as, if we're talking northern Minnesota, anything from Mille Lacs north, I'm going to be looking for whatever mid-sized lake we have locally, something that's got major rivers flowing through it. We know it's going to have clear water, potentially a little weed growth happening. It's just kind of hard to beat that. Those fish are spawned out. They're still up shallow. They're going to be feeding. You don't have to get fancy with it. There's every mid-sized lake that I just talked about in the northern half of Minnesota is going to be going right away. Every fish in that lake's most likely going to be up shallow or close to shallow, and they're going to be trying to eat.
Somebody's going to be catching them.
Right.
Usually I don't like to talk about lakes like that, but basically what Joey just said, every one of the lakes we're going to be fishing on is no secret. It's not like one of us is going to be catching 25. Well, at least I don't think we're going to be catching 25 inches cast after cast.
Yeah.
They all, if like Joey said, if it's on the Mississippi River system or a larger body of water connected to, it's going to have good walleye fishing in the spring. And you're going to get good numbers, and just get out and have fun. So,
And from Gull Lake and Brainerd all the way to Lake of the Woods, everything in between, anything that isn't a backwoods pothole, and even some of those.
Those are the ones you don't hear about, though.
Right. It's going to be good, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to go wrong. I like the Cass Lake chain, too. I mean, that's a pretty big piece of water if you include all the connected bodies.
Leech
a lot of
Lake is
people,
good.
right? Leech Lake, your classic ones: Leech Lake, Winnie, Red.
I feel like Leech is the
Mille
spot
Lacs.
to go get your limit and still have a shot at a true giant around here. Like
Yeah.
you always hear of a big fish getting caught on Leech by one of your buddies or whatnot.
Yep.
Chuck.
I mean, I kind of hit the same lakes as Jace mentioned, but you talk to all your buddies, and a lot of times it's the same story. Like, you went out on Leech, how was it? Well, we caught him. It's pretty good. And then we go to Mille Lacs usually right away, and fishing's been good the last few times we've been there.
Really good.
Yeah. And that's fishing a little bit different than what we're doing around here. But fish are in deeper, I think. But I don't know, we would fish shallow as, what do you say, like 8-10 feet sometimes, but a lot of times
I think
just fish all over.
What we do on Mille Lacs is just like we go with Brad Hawthorne, and we kind of rely on him to put us on some fish, and I think that's kind of his opening style. I think you could find some of those 12 to 17 foot fish in our area too, but our area is notorious for 2 foot walleyes, 4 foot walleyes, and how often do you get to do that? And so I know we all get glued to those really shallow areas just because it's super fun.
It's I think it's one of the most fun bites of the entire walleye season.
For sure. It's like, I used to hate walleye fishing, but I absolutely love those, like the first month. It's super fun. So.
Fish are aggressive, willing to eat. Usually you can throw a jig and minnow at them, or jig and plastic.
So maybe tell us this, Jace, if not specifically a lake, but let's say you roll up to something obscure that isn't one of the big five, say like, I don't know, Little Boy Wabido, something like that. It's a good sized lake.
Yep.
We know there's a lot of walleyes in it. We know people are going to catch them on opener. But what would you look for? You haven't been there. You don't have history there. Where are you going to?
If there is a river system or a creek, whatever, dumping into the lake, I usually like to start there because that's where those walleyes, are obviously going to spawn. Walleyes run up a creek to spawn. Usually, northern Minnesota, opening weekend, you're catching those fish coming back. So the shoreline's around that. If not, water. I do look at water temperature in the spring I think that's when it probably matters the most. And I'll just go try to find the warmest water.
Yeah.
And then one big tip that I've kind of relied on the last couple of years, wind-blown shorelines in the spring. That water is being, that surface temperature water is being pushed into that shore. And it gets better if it's 2 days of, say, even like, a north wind isn't very good in the spring because it's usually cold. But that wind-blown shoreline is going to be the warmest water. And usually the fish in the spring are going to be in the warmest water, whether that be panfish or bass or walleyes.
I think that's huge. And it's not like the fish from the south end of the lake are going to swim up to the north end of the lake.
Yeah.
But it's going to make those fish in that warmer water more active, and it's going to pull and condense that side a little bit more.
Conjugates them into one area.
It's usually where the best weeds are in the lake at that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So during the spring, the weeds aren't, they're not alive. It's usually the best weeds that are still left from the year prior. And a lot of times that might be dead reeds, bulrushes. We catch a lot of walleyes around the bulrushes in the spring.
Yeah. I'd be looking for old bulrush beds. If you can find, if they're still up enough to where you can find the edge of them, typically off somewhere not far from that edge is where your submerged weeds are going to be growing, or they're either still there or they're starting to grow, and that's going to be cover for your spot tails and your other minnows, and the walleyes that just came off the spawn are going to be rolling up in there looking for a meal.
Yep.
And a little bit of cover for themselves. And obviously those submerged weeds are a little bit more difficult because you can't necessarily always see them with your eyes.
Yep.
But
I think one thing else to touch on, more so structure-wise than anything, early on, I'll stick to more shoreline-oriented stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like, the humps and bumps out in the middle of the lake, that water temperature just isn't there yet. It just doesn't. I mean, if you have a huge, expansive flat, that's a little different. But, a hump the size of a house, most of the time won't have as many fish as it will come midsummer.
Yeah.
I'll stick to mostly shoreline stuff in the spring.
And even if it does, they're going to be less active.
Yeah.
Like the cold side of the lake.
Yep.
But then you can basically eliminate at least half the lake for starters.
Right.
You're looking at shoreline to first break stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Inside weed lines too.
Yeah.
Which I feel like with the lack of snow, semi-early ice off, I feel like there's still going to be some weeds doing all right.
Yeah, we should have some.
I think there's going to be some green weeds, but like those sandy beaches on the inside of a cabbage line, like everyone, typically fish the outside of the weed edge, but the inside can be a real good sneaky spot come spring for sure.
Those ones are fun to see on the side imaging. So it looks like salt and pepper, on the sand, and you can spot lock and cast back to them, or position the boat. And that's one thing. That's one fun thing about the spring too is usually there's not as much for weeds, so fish do show up on your side imaging a little bit better because there's just not as much things to look at. And they're in bigger pods too,
and near their gravelly spawning areas. So for sure using electronics. I'm excited to use. I've been using so far perspective mode quite a bit, and I'm really excited to.
You've dabbled with them with crappies so far, haven't you?
Crappies, and then we went to Big Stone.
Yep.
And I didn't catch many, but dang, did I see a lot. And I just think it's going to be crazy, kind of slipping up into those 5-foot spots.
Yep.
That we like to fish around opener. I think you're going to see them really, really good.
Describe perspective mode a little bit.
What
so perspective mode is the live scope, but turned horizontal.
You can use it on Hummingbird or Lowrance.
Yep.
It's just that transducer.
The bracket it runs, and then it'll switch over automatically. But then it basically gives you a live look at what side imaging or what 360 would look like. And it's think some people think it's hard to read a little bit, but where I've noticed it is you can tell the movement so good. I think in, traditional forward-facing mode, and I'm still getting kind of used to mine and whatnot, but in that shallow water, that water column's so thin, and those fish can be tight to the bottom. It's hard to see. You're having to move it a lot. In perspective mode, you just see those shadows moving around, and it's like, yep, that's a fish. And I use it on the crappies, and it was, early crappies where they were moving a lot still. They weren't on their beds or anything. They're just kind of cruising a shallow bay, and it was like, yep, that direction, boom, cast towards it and catch a fish.
Yep.
Takes a little bit of getting used to the aiming with it, because again, it's showing you the array. But what I would like to do is just, see it, which the angle's got to be, I don't know, 100 and
I think it's like 120 or
Yeah.
100 between 100 and
it's
180.
It's almost 180.
Yeah.
And I would see the school, and then I'd just point my trolling motor, because I got it on my trolling motor, in the direction that the school is running, and try to have them dead center in that, and then cast towards it. And it works really well. So I'm excited to play with it with walleye.
Fun electronics, but the spring walleye time is a time where electronics you probably don't need them as much as you do.
No, definitely.
Come late,
Yeah.
midsummer. The nice thing about opening weekend is usually you're on a body of water with other people, and you get just a general idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
If you see people setting the hook and they're up in 6 feet, that's where you should be.
That's a good point. Like you can fish out of the smallest, junkiest boat, and it's your best opportunity to catch a walleye.
Yep.
You don't need GPS.
Nope.
You don't need depth.
Yep.
You can look to see how deep you are and
Right.
cast out and catch fish. That's a good point. That's
Yep.
for sure the easiest time to catch walleye without electronics. But it's fun to look at them.
It is. Yeah.
You think part of that is, tell us about what happens in the spring that makes it so easy? Is it, they came off the spawn, they're so hungry? Or is it, this is the time of year that these fish are going to be more concentrated than ever?
I think it's all of that. I think it's
yeah.
it's concentration because of the spawn, because of the warm water areas.
Metabolisms.
Things are heating up. They're getting ready. They're putting on the feed bag. They burnt a lot of energy in the spawn or prior to the spawn, so they're eating. It's just kind of everything comes together, and
For the most part, they're all congregated in similar areas, and they're all hangry.
yes. And the bait's up shallow. Everything's up shallow too.
Yeah.
The perch are up shallow. The spot tails are up shallow. Just everything's congregated.
You hit about a
They
dozen
like-
check marks, and
They like to bite, Joe.
Yeah, because they're hangry.
Yeah.
do you ever get hangry, Joe?
I think everyone knows that we all get a little hangry.
So Joey's, what you're saying is it's time for boat snacks with Joey Ullman.
I think it could be time for boat snacks, yeah.
What do you got? What's your opener boat snack?
Well, most people that go out on opener, you got the whole weekend planned out, right? You're probably going to spend at least one full day in the boat. You got to make sure that you have something to nourish yourself with. You sit there and say, oh, I'm not going to get hungry. I'm just sitting all day. You'd be amazed how hungry you're going to get. Sometimes maybe you can fend it off, but it's best to come prepared. Me personally, I feel like maybe we've touched on this before. The easiest, fastest thing you could do, buy yourself a frozen pizza at the grocery store, the week before opener. Friday night.
Before.
Week before, day before,
Okay,
whatever it
okay.
may be. Doesn't really matter. It's a frozen pizza.
I got
we
you.
just talked about being prepared for opener.
I know, and Joey's
Okay.
being prepared. I'm sorry.
Get your snacks early.
Boat's a mess, snacks. Check. Ready
Check.
to go.
Get yourself a frozen pizza, $4, $8, a little bit of money. Cook that bad boy up Friday night, let her cool off, cut it up, throw it in a bag, and you're ready to go. I would advise having some sort of a cooler to keep it halfway cool. Like, it could be really cold, but maybe not. You don't want a lukewarm pizza necessarily.
Don't want your cheese to remelt in the sun.
Yeah, that's a problem. Get yourself a cooler, slap a bag of pizza in there. Now you got yourself a easy filling meal for basically all day. I'm not necessarily a doctor, and I'm not here to give you medical advice, so that may not be the healthiest thing you can do, but it's going to be the fastest, the most filling. What do you got, Sam? What are you bringing?
I'm stop at the gas station, pick up a bag of jerky and a thing of Pringles and some Gatorade. But I don't really eat a whole lot in the boat, and it always hits me on the ride home. And you're like, I need to eat everything because I haven't eaten all day because you're just fishing.
Now, I know I said I'm not a medical doctor, but when you do things like that, you tend to overeat, and that's a problem.
I know. And you undereat and underhydrate during the day, which
Yes.
you know I tend to do. But
So this is what you need. You need some bread, you need some turkey, and some salami, some cheese, some mayo. You gotta make 2 sandwiches, both with turkey and salami. Then you need 2 nutty bars and an apple. And you can't touch your sandwich until you at least catch one. And if you don't catch one by noon, then you can eat your sandwich. But, so, yeah, you can wait till noon, or if you catch a fish at, it's 10 o'clock, I might eat my sandwich if I caught one.
You're going.
Then you eat your nutty bars, but you don't touch the apple.
Okay.
You do not touch the apple. That's, when you're on the ride home, you're starving, and you ain't going to get food till you either get home or wherever you're going. That's when you dig into the apple because you got no other choice.
Tell me this, is that white bread on that sandwich?
It don't matter, but usually it's white, yeah.
Okay. Well, I just asked that because that's one of the more boring things I've heard. So, like, very basic. I like it. You're on the right track. We need a little flair out of Jace here.
I guess I'm just being accurate.
You are.
how about bananas in the boat? Are you guys pro or anti-bananas in the boat?
If you're a big banana guy, go ahead and bring it.
I'm okay with them
I'm okay with them.
until they won't come in the boat on tournament day, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever been in the boat when there was a banana in the boat. So, I don't know.
Chase, wow us with something here. What are you bringing?
I'm like a mixture of all you guys. There's times where I'll pack a sandwich. Usually Saturday, opening day, I'll have a sandwich. Sunday, it's gotten to the point where you stayed up late the night before because you either fished, you fried fish, leftover fish maybe. Usually Sunday, not as prepared, and I'll probably do a Sam and stop at a gas station.
Okay.
Comment your favorite boat snacks below.
Yeah.
And then also comment if you're trying the Joe Yeoman pizza, because definitely done it. It's dang good.
Charlie kind of mentioned earlier off camera, but let's go through one tradition that we do every opener. Starting with Sam.
I guess I don't really have a hardcore opener tradition. Generally, it's just been me. I go out early in the morning, like not midnight or anything, but just get up early, go catch some fish or whatnot. And then my wife will come out with me in the afternoon sometimes. And then second weekend, kind of a tradition, my dad always comes up and we spend the weekend doing that. But this year too, opener, my father-in-law is going to hop in the boat with me. So that'll be super fun. We've never done opener together because he kind of works a job that he gets super busy in the spring. So I'm excited to do that. But
Nice.
Yeah, I think kind of have quite a few traditions on opener, but some of one of the favorites is just, talking about going the day before and getting ready with the family and talking about where we're going to fish and how we're going to do it. And another one that I love to admit, I don't hate to admit, I love to admit, but after we get a limit of walleyes, favorite tradition is to go bass fishing.
yeah.
So I love to admit that I want to get a limit of walleyes so I can go bass fishing.
Yeah, you get your walleye fun in, and then you go.
And you can't go
Crack
bass
on a
fishing
few
until you
bass.
get the walleye limit.
Right. That's a sneaky one there. People seem to forget about bass
Or panfish.
or panfish, and they're both going to be real fired up opening weekend. So that's a real good option to switch to.
I'm pulling out the frog. As soon as that,
Okay.
as soon as the limit hits,
Charlie's
pulling
gonna
out. I'm pulling out the reed runner frog.
50-degree
and
frog.
I don't need to catch. I don't need to catch a bass. I just need to catch a bass on a frog.
Yeah. Okay. Like that.
Joe?
We typically get a pretty big group of guys together every year, hit a few different lakes. Nothing too crazy special. You know, you try and have a fish fry with everybody, maybe make some sort of other interesting meal at night. Just get the old band back together and hang out. But there's another tip for you that's a sneaky one. If you've got a big group of guys and you got 4, 5, 6, 8 boats in a group of guys, you can really break down a piece of water faster with help from your friends instead of trying to fish every individual spot yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
That was a good one. Tradition 1, Friday night, going to the bait store. The buzz in that bait store is unreal.
Yeah.
That Friday night, or Friday afternoon, I should say.
I say we're always sneaking out at lunch to make sure we get spot tails.
Guys are coming from southern Minnesota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and we're spoiled up here. We have, Leech Lake, Winnie, Red Lake. We're kind of in the hub of, really good fisheries. But that Friday afternoon at any of the bait stores in northern Minnesota, there's just that, that buzz. Everyone's excited for the next day. Everyone's in a good mood. They're all where they want to be. And it's just fun to be around. You kind of have that, you can feel the vibe that everyone has, that they're excited to be there. And then usually Sunday, because it's Mother's Day, we'll do a fish fry that afternoon.
I like that.
Yeah.
Would you call the buzz on Friday afternoon? Is it like the Fisherman's opener to summer? You know how they always say Memorial Weekend is like the start of summer. I think for fish heads, opening weekend is really the start to summer. Mm-hmm. You're excited for things to come. You're excited for the weekend, and you're just ready to roll. It's like new life has been given to you after a long winter.
It's game on.
Yeah. I like that.
One last tip. Know all the rules and regulations on all the lakes that you're going to be fishing on.
Mm-hmm. Get your basics from a rule standpoint squared away. Life jackets, throwable, fire extinguisher, horn. Make sure they're all working. Wear your life jackets. Wear a kill cord.
Be safe.
Northland fish and tackle, fisherman's favorite. It's a fisherman's favorite.